it is an outrage. It is, I think, in technical terms, a crime against humanity. We've had nearly 50 people die at checkpoints because they were not allowed through to reach hospital treatment. We've had close to 300 people die because of the lack of appropriate medication. No cancer drugs available, can you imagine, for 1.5, 2 million people. And at the very small level, we visited a hospital struggling against the odds with missing drugs, and they have quite an elaborate piece of equipment which was donated to them, which is an ultrasound, and it's not working. Why isn't it working? Because the electricity keeps going on and off. They have to change from the main supply to their to their generator, and in the process all the parts of the machinery are liable to fail, and a relatively small component of this ultrasound has failed, and it is sitting there out of use because there is no way you can bring the small part in to make an expensive and extremely useful piece of equipment work again. So it is a crime against humanity, which is infinite in the level of details in how it penetrates the lives of those people in Gaza. On the other hand, I also bring back the sense of extraordinary adaptability of the Gaza population, so that somehow, despite their remarkable and unforgivable situation in which they've been placed, they manage to make a life. They work their way around things, and I think it is a tribute to their humanity and to the complexity and sophistication of their society that these things are still workable. You have a working society still there. Of course, if the Israeli foot on the throat of Gaza should happen to get a little bit heavier than they thought they were doing, then you will have not just a humanitarian crisis, you will have a humanitarian disaster.
All the time, the reference point for Israeli action is the Holocaust. And they say the Holocaust justifies all. My reply to that is, by enjoining a crime against humanity on your side, you require yourself to behave to the highest moral and ethical standards. They use the Holocaust not to justify the highest ethical standards, but the lowest. Every time they say Holocaust, we must say morality.
When they say Holocaust, do they remember that the Nazis have incarcerated millions of Jews in ghettos in a similar way?
They forget that. They also forget many other things. As I walk down the streets of Hebron, past shops that are owned by Palestinian traders, that have been closed down by settlers, closed down, shuttered up, and with Magan Davids painted on them. Exactly the same image as one could see in photographs of Berlin or Munich in the 30s.
Just for a moment to the airport, 30 million euros of money blasted to pieces. As Mike says, they must have stood in the middle of the terminal and shot at everything or driven into the things with armoured vehicles. It wasn't necessary in order to, all you need to do is dig a few holes in a runway. But they did all that. Now, why would they do that? To show who's the master. It is a display of flamboyant destruction necessary to demonstrate that they can do anything they like. And this attitude of treating, in fact, Palestine and the Palestinians as a subspecies, rather indeed as the Germans treated the Jews, is one of the most disastrous afflictions of Israeli society today. We saw just that one manifestation of it. In most countries, if there's a state of something like war going on and there's a report that peace is imminent, everybody gets very happy and excited. But in Israel, when recently, a few months back, there was serious talk about some kind of peace initiative, everybody went around miserably and proclaimed this is a disaster. And this connects to these rockets. The Israelis say the blockade is to stop the rockets from being fired. But in fact, they need the rockets to be fired in order to justify the blockade. So everything needs to be stood on its head to be understood properly.
During the American elections, the Israelis invaded Gaza and killed between 6 and 10 what they call militants. Their reason for doing this is they claim there was a tunnel through which these militants were going to burrow their way into Israel to kidnap 1 or 2 more Shalits. I have an open mind on whether this tunnel exists or not, although I think it is striking that the Israelis have never released any photographs of this tunnel. However, even if the tunnel existed, I am no civil engineer, but it doesn't seem to me to be too difficult to have poured concrete down the tunnel or flushed it out with high-pressure hoses to make it unusable. The result of the Israeli aggression has been that people in Gaza are again firing Qassam rockets at Sderot. I don't think this is a good thing to be doing. I don't like firing rockets at anybody. But the Israelis, you can only see this as a deliberate attempt by the Israelis to get the rockets being fired again. And this is not just a question of a few rockets at Sderot. It has now provoked Hamas into saying it will not continue the ceasefire. We're waiting this moment to hear what's going to happen. Not continuing the ceasefire would be a pity for those people living around Sderot. I think it's going to be a far worse tragedy for people living in Gaza. And I feel this... The Israelis are not so stupid. They could have done this without knowing what they were doing. They had to have known what they were doing and what the consequences of their actions were. And one can only hold them responsible for the outcome. Free Gaza Boat can't be running return trips for students to get them there and back again. The only answer is to reopen the Eretz and Rafah crossings and to get the airport reopened so that Gaza can take its place again in the world.